Welcome back to Beyond Brown Borders, where we make talking about your mental health a norm. We just saw Joel's ass,
Damn, boy.
and now we're seeing his pretty face. Um, Joel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's get straight into it. It's nothing in that cup. Let's get straight into it.
Let's do it.
So, Joel,
Yes,
we're here for Beyond Brown Borders.
we are.
Can you please tell me what that is and why does it matter?
Okay, well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I've said this in the sort of the last video that we did. Beyond Brown Borders is a mental health space for the brown community, by the brown community. It's a space where sort of anyone from an ethnic background or not can come and sort of share their lived experiences and their journeys with mental health, and also to sort of, I guess, in a way, understand themselves a little bit better, the way that they process their emotions, and possibly even to get tips and tricks and advice on sort of how to navigate through mental health struggles.
And what inspired you to start this journey in mental health advocacy?
Now, I think the biggest thing for me was probably understanding that there isn't really a space for brown people to come and share their mental health experiences and journeys. A lot of the time, I think as a brown community, we often neglect that mental health is a prevalent issue among our community, and it's a lot of the time just overlooked, not talked about. And at the same time, even if we are to talk about it or, put some actionable steps to addressing mental health, I think there's a lot of barriers that stop people from actually really understanding and seeking that help that they might need to address mental health. And now, a lot of the time, that is, you might not want to go to a white therapist because they don't necessarily understand your specific circumstance, your scenario, how your cultural background has impacted your mental health, and that's okay. That's not fully understandable, but that's why Beyond Brown Borders is here to provide that gap in the market where you feel comfortable to join this community, to share how you're traveling with your mental health, and to grow together and to go through that journey, not alone, but as a community.
In terms of the brown community, Joel, what are some of the biggest mental health challenges that the brown community faces, in your opinion?
Well, there's probably a lot, but I think there's probably a couple that really stand out the most, and that's one, it's not normal for us to talk about mental health, and it's almost like it's a wrong thing or it doesn't exist. I think growing up as a brown person in Australia and sort of seeing the way my parents were raised and also how, their parents were raised as well, mental health is never really at the forefront of anything. If you're struggling with emotions, if you're struggling with mental health concerns, a lot of the time it's neglected. It's pushed at the back of the mind. You're never addressing it. You're never talking about it. And that's a really, really toxic way to look at it. Because at the end of the day, just because you have a mental health concern, it doesn't make you, ill in the head or a bit psycho. Absolutely not. It makes you human. It makes you normal. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is, as I was sort of mentioning before, there isn't really anything available, at least as I'm aware of or Miles aware of, that provides brown people or even really ethnic people the level of understanding that is required to address their mental health concerns to begin with. So I think those two are the biggest things for me.
Very well said, Joel. Can you please expand a bit about your personal experience and how your personal experience has shaped your perspective on mental health?
Yeah, that's actually quite good because I was always someone that, struggled with mental health from a young age through my adolescence and into my 20s. And I think mental health for me was always something that I'm sure many of you can relate to, was never really something that I really cared about all that much or wasn't really vested into. But I think over time, you start to realize that, there's actually this weighing on my mind, or there's that weighing on my mind. But then, the more it starts to weigh in your mind, you realize that, okay, is there something that I can do about it? Maybe I should go see a therapist. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. And then maybe, much like me, you start listening to all these podcasts and motivational speeches and speakers and TED Talks and all this, that, in hope that you'll find some sort of answer and meaning in those to satisfy that void that you feel because of your mental health concern. And I've struggled a lot with that, and I've listened to endless hours of TED Talks and motivational podcasts, whatever, and yet nothing really seemed to help. And one thing I realized was that I think finding that outlet and opportunity to be able to speak about my emotions and actually get them off my chest was the biggest thing that really helped me. And that journey that it took to get to that level where I was comfortable to share and openly talk about my emotions and my mental health concerns, yeah, that's what really grew to what this is now, me talking in front of a camera about my mental health.
Sort of expanding on that, what role do you think culture, family expectations, and stigma play in mental well-being?
I'm sure a lot of brown people can relate to this, but it's probably a big part. I think culture, as a culture, we're not really known for talking about any sort of mental health concern. Family expectations is huge. I'm sure growing up through your adolescence, you might be a kid that's in your adolescence right now, going through high school, that is watching this being like, yeah, but my parents just keep nagging me to do this, that. They expect me to become a doctor, engineer, whatever, so on and so forth. And it's difficult. I know it's really difficult. And that does shape a lot of the mental struggles that we go through, especially during our adolescence. And sort of the stigma around having a mental health concern makes you maybe a bit of a psycho. That all needs to be broken down, and especially within our community, more than anything, that needs to be broken down a lot. All these negative connotations around mental health, we need to take away. And I think that's something that we're trying to work towards actively.
And Joel, was there a moment in your life that made you realize that mental health needs more attention?
Absolutely. There's probably multiple in my life, but I think the one that comes to my mind the most is, well, get comfortable because I'll give you a bit of a story. This was 2019, I was in year 11. I remember I was going through quite a rough year that whole year, and this was towards the end of the year, I'd say. And I remember I was struggling with a number of things, which I'm sure I'll get into at some point later on. But I remember going out to dinner with my family, and I sort of already wasn't in really a good mental space. And I remember previously sort of telling my parents, hey, look, I'm not really doing all that great, and them sort of brushing it aside a little bit. And that whole time they were sort of nagging me about, you got year 12 coming up next year. What are your plans? What do you want to do? This, that. And almost to a certain extent, I know they were always trying to look out for me, but it felt in the moment like they were pressuring me and expectations and all these things. And it really got to a point where, I think previously I'd shown signs of that I wasn't mentally okay. That, whether it was my actions, the way that I spoke, my mannerisms, they were all sort of not like me. And it got to a point where I literally was in that restaurant and I started breaking down, right? And I started breaking down and I had to tell my parents, why can't you guys see that I'm not okay? And it got to that point when then they were like, oh, maybe he does need a bit of help. Maybe he does need to see someone. And at that time, I didn't feel comfortable going to see a therapist. And when I eventually did, I realized that, well, this therapist really doesn't understand my problems and what I'm going through on a cultural and personal level the way that I want them to. And so that never really ended up working out. So that was probably the moment, that was probably the turning point where I thought, okay, mental health is a real thing. I got to do something to address it.
So moving on from that, how do you personally take care of your mental health whilst advocating for others?
Yeah, so I sort of touched on this before. One of the things that I do to sort of find an outlet is, number one, find an outlet that works for you. But for me, that was spending time with friends and family. I'll never say to sort of escape from your problems and all of that, because that's not really a healthy way of dealing with it. And I'm not an expert to give you that advice, but I think for me, what really helps is just spending time with the people that I really love and care for. That brings a lot of happiness, a lot of joy to me. So I find that that's quite a helpful thing to manage my mental health concerns or my mental health issues. Now, at the same time, advocating for others, it's just about rocking up. It's really as easy as when you see a friend or a family member, just asking them how they're doing and taking that time out of your day to call that person that you haven't spoken to in a month or two and just be like, hey, like I haven't spoken to you, like, are you okay? Like, how's things going? How's life? And just really taking that time out of your day to just listen to them. Because maybe that's all they really wanted from someone and you were that someone that listened to them.
Joel, what's your hope for Beyond Brand Borders and the impact that it can make?
I'm sure Mal agrees with this, but the possibilities for Beyond Brand Borders are endless. But at the end of the day, what I want it to be is, one, first and foremost, a safe place for brown people alike to come together and build a community that encourages mental health awareness and also talks about what it's like to be brown and our individualistic problems and struggles and battles with mental health. And also, I want it to be a space and a service that people can access, hopefully at a very affordable cost if it does get to that point where people feel comfortable to go to a specialist or a counselor or a therapist, whatever it might be, to talk about their mental health and someone that actually understands their individual concerns based off their cultural context and so on and so forth. So I think that's one of my biggest hopes and dreams. Those are my two biggest hopes and dreams for Beyond Brown Borders.
And finally, as we wrap up, what's one piece of advice for someone struggling in silence?
One really good advice that I've been told is understanding that you're never alone. I think when you're going through all of it, when you're in the thick of it all, it's very easy to feel like you're alone and there's no one in the world that understands what you're going through. But that's not the case. I'm sure there's plenty of people, even within your circle, that understands and sort of has experienced what you're going through already. Now, if they haven't, hopefully we've provided you and we are providing you with a space where, you can DM us at any time, shoot us a message. I'm sure we'll be able to get in contact and just come and share and talk and vent about your problems. But just know that you're never alone. So that's the biggest thing.
You got us, if anything.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, Joel. And thanks for tuning into Beyond Brown Borders.
Absolutely. Now, if you liked this content, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe and hit that bell icon as well, because you can stay up to date with all of the videos we post and you'll never miss a single video.